Good morning, everyone. I'm here with one of my really good friends and a colorist that I work with every day, Melanie Sewell, who's awesome, and I love working with her every single day. And we're here to talk about transitioning to beauty fusion, something that she did.
It's been a year ago.
I think it's been a year now.
Yeah.
So anyway, Mel, if
Wow.
you want to give us a little background on yourself.
Okay. My name is Melanie, and I've been a hairstylist for for 30 years. Oof. And I've used several different color lines, but if you ask Dustin here, I am the holdout usually for trying something new. Pretty particular about what I like. So, um, oh my gosh, I started working in Carmel so many years ago, lots of shampoo sets and perms. I've always loved color, always loved color. And then after a while, I started using Goldwell, and then I worked for them for quite a while. I was an education manager in the Bay Area, and uh, then got out of that, moved up to Bend. It's I love color. I've always loved color. I love to know how things work. I love the color wheel. I'm any kind of painting, crafting, anything that's artistic, I love. So obviously I gravitate towards color. I don't know, what else do you want to know? It's easy to talk about other people. It's really hard to talk about yourself, isn't it?
So I guess the next question would be, what led you to think about transitioning from, well, what was your previous color line that you were using?
Goldwell.
Goldwell.
I've used Fermisi back when I used Fermisi. I've used Schwarzkopf, Goldwell for like 20 plus years. And it was really hard for me to step out of Goldwell because I knew that world so well and knew that product line inside and out. It's hard for me to step out of anything because once I really know something, it's my comfort zone. And as we know, it's once you get that comfort zone, it's really hard to step out of it sometimes for some people. I'm a little bit OCD, so it's really hard for me to step out of it. I have always envied his ability to just try all these different things. And even though I know how to use it, just that knowing a product and knowing exactly what it's going to do makes it really hard for me to step out. But I wanted to try something new. Like I said, I envy his ability to just really jump out there and try new things. So that's what I did.
Okay. What are you enjoying most about Beauty Fusion?
I love that I can change it. I love I love control. I love the fact that because the alkalinity I get to add, I can adjust things. I can adjust that formula to suit my particular client's needs, because that's the thing about some other hair colors. There's different things that we can adjust for each client because each client's different, right? You've got texture, density, porosity. So it's not just put this color on this client. But with Beauty Fusion, I can adjust that to fit that specific client. It really truly is a customized formula.
I completely agree with you. It's one of the best things about Beauty Fusion. And after you've used it for a while, you can figure out, how to tweak it and the nuances of like the boosters and what you can and cannot do. There is a little bit of a learning curve, but once you get used to it, there's a lot of flexibility and mixing ratios and things that you can do with it. Okay, people are still trying to get in. Let's see if I got her. I think so. Okay. What have been some of your biggest challenges with using Beauty Fusion?
I'd say the biggest challenge was that first jump. So just jumping, because if anybody in here has gone from one manufacturer to another, there's always differences between like what a 6-in is in one and what a 6-in is in another, and learning that company's scale. That was a little scary because my clients, I specialize in gray coverage, gray blending, gray transitions. So that was a really biggie for me. So one of the things I would say, if you're somebody that's wanting a transition, is take a little section in the back and just do Beauty Fusion there and see what that looks like around the color you have. But once I started using it and I got really comfortable with it, I would say the biggest challenge is it doesn't fade. So
Mhm.
I have had to alter just about every client's formula to go a little bit lighter. And which is really surprising because we live in an area that's really dry. It's high desert where we live, so we kind of get whammied all year long with color fadage because of the dryness and the porosity it creates in the hair. So having to actually go lighter on a formula was really surprising.
Yeah, that's one thing I have noticed just in general with the switch over to Artego across the board, whether it's Beauty Fusion or its color. When I was using other lines, and I mean, I've used them all, I was noticing that I was having to do a lot of color balancing, and there were lines that were worse than others. But, I really got into that habit of, I'm doing a 6N retouch, and no matter what, I'm glazing the ends with 7N every single time. And I felt like I had to keep the color balanced and keep it looking hydrated, even if it hadn't faded that much. And I've noticed that in my transition that I'm doing a good 50% less glazes. And, to substitute that for clients so they're feeling like they're not getting left out, I'm doing like a conditioning treatment, using a wonderful VASO mask on them at, the chair,
These are amazing.
as opposed to, using a gloss on their ends. And that's been, very different.
Yeah, it definitely changed how I formulate here because being in the high desert with that fadage, I used to really, I didn't even realize I was doing it, but I formulated to the fade, to what it was going to fade out, the underlying pigment, the tone of the color. I would formulate to the fade they were going to get living, just being here. Because a lot of people here are very outdoors, so they're out in the sun. I mean, it's not even just high desert, it's the sun, it's everything. So that has been a huge change and really had to adjust how I chose the shades that I do choose in my formulas.
Okay, so really quick, we're gonna go over a little Beauty Fusion kind of 101 very quickly. And then if anybody has more questions, I'm actually gonna put my phone number in the chat box. You guys can text me any other questions. And I see that Robert has some questions on Shades EQ. If I don't answer them, because we're gonna kind of go over some of that, feel free to text me and I can answer those like a little bit more specifically one-on-one. And I do know color fusion and color gels really well. So I want to start with, there are colors in Beauty Fusion that have, let's see if you guys can see that, 2 dots on the bottle right here, a full coverage and a half coverage. This means it can be used for permanent and demi plus only. These bottles have 3. There's a empty circle, meaning it can be used as an acidic liquid demi, demi plus, and permanent. And I will have to say, if something's working for you, great, continue doing it. In my experience behind the chair, doing 6 to 8 colors a day, I learned very quickly that if you're gonna use it with 5 volume and no booster, to make sure that you literally are only mixing, per manufacturer's directions, the colors that have 3 dots together and not intermixing them with colors with 2 dots if you're not adding a booster in. And yes, it may work sometimes, but I will tell you that it will go haywire. It may end up black. It can do all kinds of fun things. And I don't know if many of you have experienced, but Beauty Fusion does not like to fade. So if your toner grabs, if your glaze grabs, it's there for a while.
It's got an iron grip.
Yeah, it's not coming out like some of the other products like Shades EQ, which is very wonderful. If you don't want your toner fading out after 2 shampoos, it's also very awful if, you mix one of the reds with 6G and it ends up blue-black. And I've done it and it happened. So on another note, uh, all the colors can be used as a demi plus by adding booster 1 in a 10% portion to your formula. So that would look like 60 grams of any one of the colors, 6 grams of booster 1, and 60 grams of 5-volume oxy milk. I will also tell you that using oxy milk is important because it has thickening agents in it. I'm not telling you that to sell a developer. I don't care if you buy it, but I will tell you that it will not adhere to the hair as well. So you will not get as good a gray coverage, and it will drip all over the person's head and run down their neck if you don't use it. And I've personally seen, and I've also tried, not using oxy milk and even using one of the other Artego developers, and you will not get the gray coverage that you need by using another developer.
I know there's a big trend right now of you don't have to use the manufacturer's developers, and you really don't. It's hydrogen peroxide, but there are other things within that ingredient system that support and enhance the color line you're using it with. They're formulated specifically for that color line, so it does make a difference sometimes.
The other thing I want to go over is the difference between booster 1 and booster 2. So we have personally had them tested. There is a difference between booster 1 and booster 2. Around booster 1 is less alkaline, booster 2 is more alkaline. Booster 1 is to be used with levels 0 through 6. Booster 2, 7 through 12. That's why if you've been using booster 1 as your sole booster, if you're wondering why your darker levels are so dark, it's because it needs the alkalinity from booster 2 to be more on target. And I'll tell you, we went a long time thinking that they were the same. And I noticed that my levels 7 through 12 weren't as light, weren't as bright as they should be. And then we had them tested and realized that there was a difference and started using the difference. And I mean, I'll have to say, it does make a difference. And I always get that question of, well, I'm mixing a 6 and a 7. And I would tell you, well, you could use, the proportions of which booster for which color, or, that's really a personal choice. Do you need the extra boost from booster 2? Or do you not need that boost because you're not going as far? Then go ahead and use booster 1. The one big rule breaker I will tell you is in the tech manual from Italy, they tell you, even with Demi Plus, to use booster 2 in your lighter formulas. I personally, when you're doing a demi color, don't really see the reason for making it more alkaline in those higher levels. Because that's kind of, to me, not the point of a demi color. So I use booster 1 for my sole booster when using a demi plus, unless potentially I'm using 13 volume or covering resistant gray. And in that case, I may use booster 2 with a level 3 or 4.
Yes.
But there again, that's where it becomes, your creative palette to figure out what you need to get great coverage. I mean, I've had a client that was a level 3 and I could not get coverage even by increasing booster 1. So I went in and used, the 20% booster 2 and went up to 30 volume, and we got complete coverage, because really that's what an NN series is it's a little bit heavier dye load pigment, usually like half a level darker. And, the alkalinity is higher. You can make an NN if you need it by, let's say you need a 6 NN by using let's say 45 grams of 6N, 15 grams of 5N with 60 grams of 20 volume, and then using booster 2, you now have your heavier pigment dye load and you have your, more alkaline formula. Can you explain the circles again? Yes. Okay, so Beauty Fusion comes again with bottles that have 2 circles or 3 circles. There's 36 colors that have 3 circles. Those are all intermixable by themselves with 5 volume and no booster. And let me explain to you why they're intermixable by themselves. The coupling agents in them do not need an alkalizer to work. So therefore, they're stable on their own. These colors that have 2 dots are meant for using as a demi plus and a permanent. They have to be combined with an alkalizer, either booster 1 or booster 2, to make the pigments properly couple in order to work. If you intermix these 2 colors together, you will get some coupling. You just don't know what pigments are going to couple and what pigments are not going to couple. Like I said, I used 544, which is a 3 dot, and 6G, trying to make a golden red gloss. It ended up 2 blue violet because only the blue pigments coupled when mixed together. So, per manufacturer's directions, do not intermix 2 dots and 3 dots unless there's an alkalizer and you're using it for a demi plus or a permanent formulation. And for those of you that are, what does couple mean? So when the dye molecules form together with peroxide, they have a chemical reaction, and there's 2 molecules and they form together inside the hair shaft. So in order for certain pigments to actually lock together, they need an alkaline agent, whether it's ammonia, MEA, AMP, in order to actually lock inside the hair shaft. There are a few, I believe there's 6 pigments that couple on their own and lock together with no alkalizing agent and become stable inside the hair shaft. So what that means is if you intermix these 2 colors, half the pigments will lock together and will join together and the other half will do absolutely nothing. And you just have no idea with predictability what pigments are going to lock together and what are not.
I think the easiest way to think about coupling is like Velcro,
Mhm.
where they really they stick together.
Yeah.
It's not like they intermix and become one another, but they stick together. It's like clusters.
That's a really good analogy. So if you're not using an alkalizer with bottles with 2 dots, you're not going to get that Velcroing or coupling happening inside the hair shaft reliably. If you mix using, so can you mix them with, hold on, I need to see this. Yes, absolutely. All of them are intermixable using 20, 30, 40 volume with either booster. It's all it means is if there's 2 dots on them, they have to be mixed with the booster. No matter what way you use your booster, whether it's 10% for a demi, 20% for a permanent, 30% for a high lift. They just have to be mixed with the booster. And on the Artego website, and you can actually call customer care, there's actually a booster cheat sheet. And it literally shows you, so you're not doing math, the demi plus formula. So if you're using 10 grams of any color, it'll say 1 gram of booster 1, 10 grams of developer, and it makes it really fast to hang in your dispensary if you just don't want to think about doing the math, and it breaks it down, and they have that at the office. Also, I would highly encourage you, there's the 2 original manuals that you see. We have lots of marks in them, thanks to Melanie. The two original Italian manuals, one is a little bit more streamlined, but I recommend both. And I recommend everyone using Beauty Fusion read them both from front to back. There's a lot of really useful information and a lot of really, really, really good formulas. So like those of you struggling with like color balancing, there's some great things in there. And I will tell you that like Beauty Fusion has a really good color balancing formula, because I know everybody really struggles with that. Everybody says, well, what do you do? You know, the 5 volume is very progressive. And I will tell you, without a booster in your demi formula, if you're just using the shades that are liquid acidic, they're very progressive and don't stop. So there's something you definitely need to keep your eye on, unlike
Do not go eat your lunch.
yeah, they're not like a Shades EQ, you know, and you can't really look at them as like a Shades EQ. Where you, let's say, apply your 6N retouch and then you apply a 6N gloss and walk away and let it sit for 30 minutes. That's not going to happen. Your ends will end up a level 4, your roots will end up a level 6. So there's two ways to kind of do this. The way that I originally started was I would do their retouch. I would shampoo them out at the bowl, and then I would mix up usually like 6N and clear with equal parts 5 volume, and I would apply it at the bowl. As most of you have experienced, the glosses usually take in about 5 minutes. That's usually what I would do, and they would get their gloss at the bowl. In 5 minutes, I'd rinse them out. And of course, you could vary that. Just remember, you would only want to use colors with 3 dots to do that service. The other option, which I've played around with, and it works very, very well, is you would apply your 6N retouch, wait about 10 minutes, and then you go in and use 3 parts clear to 1 part of whatever shade you want to refresh. Manufacturer is going to recommend 6N with booster in a demi plus formulation with 5 volume, and apply from your retouch to the ends and let it sit on 15 to 20 minutes. So that's going to kind of take the place of, you know, your Dia Richesse, your Color Touch, your Shades EQ, your colorants. And be mindful in that formulation. Let's say you don't want to use 6N and you want to refresh them with something warmer. You can use 613 because there's a booster in there. You could use 6.3 if you needed to warm it up. You could use 6.1 if you needed to cool it down. If you were worried about doing on level, you could do 7.1. You could do 7.13. You know, the world is your oyster when it comes to refreshing, but you know, that is their recommended way of refreshing, and it works quite well. And it's going to really fit into those niche, you know, refreshing situations, or if you have clients that are very used to a root retouch being applied and then a gloss on their ends, and they feel like they're being skimped on if it's not on, you know, 15 minutes, because I get it. There are those people and they feel like, oh, what are you doing? My gloss has only been on for 5 minutes. Now, that's pretty much how I choose to use Beauty Fusion. I pretty much always use it with booster and a demi plus formula. Very rarely do I use it as an acidic demi. I just feel like it is safer and more controllable. And as many colors a day as I do, I don't have time to stop and go, fuck, what do I do? Or bleach wash, or, you know, any of those fun things that can happen, with the exception of the level 12s, 11s, the 10s, and then there's an 8253 that I use as toners. Those I do apply with 5 volume and no booster because you don't need it for toning bleached hair. And, you know, those usually work for me personally in 3 to 7 minutes at the longest. And I just stand at the bowl and keep my eye on it. And clear is your best friend, you know, when toning. until you get the hang of it. You know, I work with another stylist that uses 11-2-1 straight, 30 seconds on, off. They love it and it's great. 3 parts clear. What else did you say? I'm trying to take notes. Okay, so it's 3 parts clear, 1 part your target shade, 10% of your booster. So like a good formula would be 45 grams clear, 15 grams of 60, 6 grams of booster 1, 60 grams of 5 volume. Mix it up and apply. And speaking of,
In the beginning, if it's confusing with the percentages, because it can be, which if you're, because you're using the same bottle, so are you with 20 volume, are you doing permanent, demi-permanent with the 10 and 20%? The easiest thing is what are you, if you're doing a demi, it's 10%. So stick with your 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 gram mixtures, and until you get the hang of that, because once you get the hang of adding it and how much to add, it'll come super easy. But that was a hang up for me in the beginning. Like, okay, wait, what was I supposed to add? And I'm not gonna lie, there are a couple times where I was doing a demi and I was fishing some of the booster out of the bowl because I had used a 20% versus a 10% addition to it. So yeah, it's just, if you do in increments of 10, it's easier because it's the 10% for a demi and it's 20% for a permanent mixture. It'll just help you get the hang of it a little bit faster.
yeah, and I will say, you know, if things are working for you, however you're measuring teaspoons, whatever, continue doing that. I will tell you from past experience that accuracy with Beauty Fusion down to the actual gram is very important. And if you're having like inconsistent results, things not turning out that way, you really need to kind of throw the teaspoon away and go to grams. So it's very, very precise, because 1 gram off, and it can throw you a little, you know, off, especially if you're doing a smaller mixture. If you're doing a 20 gram mixture and you're 1 gram off with your booster, it's going to make a difference. If you're doing a full 2-ounce application, no, it won't.
But
But
also, I mean, having said that, that's the great thing about this line too, is there's so many different ways to approach it. For some people, the teaspoon method is going to be more understandable for them. For other people, it's going to be more of the percentage. Some people are going to lean more heavily into the cheat sheet and just go by that. Whatever makes it easiest for you is the right thing to do.
so we're going to show you a little trick that we learned with mixing. It's a little off script, but there's 2 manufacturers that make these lovely little shakers, and they're a lifesaver. Everybody asks, you put in booster first, you put in the color. I'll have to say this is the only way we mix it. It takes about 10 seconds. We get the best consistency, no lumps, no bumps. So L'Oreal makes these color shakers. Firmisi also makes ones that are dark gray. I feel like the 2 of them hold up. You know, I mean, this shaker is probably 10 years old, this one in particular. And the seal doesn't break on it. So I'd highly recommend Salon Centric, RDA, Cosmoprof, BSG for the Firmisi ones that are gray.
Is anyone using Beauty Fusion right now that like just ends up coming up with creative expletives when you're trying to mix the booster into? Is there anybody, if you are in the chat, right? Yes, because this is going to be a game changer for you. No?
Okay, so we're just going to show you how.
We'll start you off right then.
Okay, and then getting one of these mixer balls, they're used in like protein shakes. You can get them off Amazon. They're $1. They're the best thing in the entire world. I mean, you can whisk till you're blue in the face. This is gonna save you time. So anyway, we take one of these, we throw it in, turn our scale on, and let's grab.
There we go.
So this is how easy this is.
My tray is very wobbly, so.
we'll just go ahead. This is always the fun part. We're gonna go ahead and dump in 60 grams. Go.
This is another thing that he makes fun of me for. I always add my developer first and then I add my color, and he's always shaking his head at me. I don't know why I started that. I will always do that, even with the lightener, and he just always sits there and shakes his head at me, but hey.
Okay, so we're using 512. And we're gonna use it in a permanent formulation. So we're gonna use booster 1. We did 60 grams, so we're gonna add in 12 grams of booster. But, and you know, with every step, I go ahead and zero it out, just so I don't forget. I'm a little ADHD. And with 3 components, it's hard to scoop stuff back out.
Trust me, it is.
We'll go ahead and add in 60 grams of developer. And I just love this, you know, I was with L'Oreal for a long time, and that's what kind of gave me this idea. So anyway.
It's gonna sound like you're making a cocktail. Yeah.
That should be good. And I always get that, well, there's metal in there. I mean, you can fish the ball out if you find it necessary. I would also say to you that don't use aluminum foil if you're worried about metal.
I haven't had any problems with it, and I just dump it in my bowl.
Yeah.
It's easier than fishing it out.
So, but I mean, if you want to fish it out, if you're worried about it. I just want to show you, you get a really nice, even, super thick, you know, putty consistency. It's not really drippy. I mean, I had a bunch on my brush, no lumps. I don't know if you guys can see, it's all blended. I mean, all the way through. So that's my preference for mixing. You guys can do what you want. I just feel like showing you that is a really good saver. We also have an Artego bottle. These are the best bottles. They don't leak when they're sealed. You can get them at the office. I have inserted, well, I'm probably not going to get it back out.
No,
I inserted one of those shaker balls in there. So I can just add my Beauty Fusion. I also still put it on a scale, especially because that ball is in there, and you can shake it up. If you're going to use it for permanent. Also too, I find that it really does help mix it all together. So you get a really thick consistency, even when you're using 5 volume, you know, with equal parts 12-1. I feel like you get a really nice consistency. And because that ball is, you know, I wish I could get it back out. Maybe you guys can see in there, because it's so open, I feel like it doesn't really block the flow of color, or it's not like it makes a ton more stick in there to make it hard
I did use
to get out.
I had a smaller ball that I used at first, and that did actually float a little more into the cap. That did actually block a little. The bigger one does not. The bigger one, no problem whatsoever.
Maybe we can send Annie the link.
Yeah, absolutely.
Off your Amazon. Also, 2 of you guys text me and want a link. We can directly send you a link to Amazon if you want that. Like I said, these bottles, the Artego ones, are awesome. They stay sealed. The seals don't break. You don't have color oozing out of the top, which I love.
They're easy to clean, which I love. This like makes my little OCD heart sing. They're easy to clean.
Also too, because there's the shaker ball in there, if you're having trouble, a little tip is just have some salt, cheap generic salt, and add like a teaspoon of salt to your bottle and some water and shake it up. And it'll take out any residue of color in there if you're using a red. And it'll take out any residue of color in there if you're using a red. And it'll take out any residue of color in there if you're using a red. And it'll take out any residue of color in there if you're using a red. And it'll take out any residue of color in there if you're using a red. And it'll take out any residue of color in there if you're using a red. And it'll take out any residue of color in there if you're using a red. And it'll take out any residue of color in there if you're using a red. And it'll take out any residue of color in there if you're using a red. And it'll take out any residue of color in there if you're using a red. And it'll take out any residue of color in there if you're using a red. And it'll take out any residue of color in there if you're using a red. And it'll take out any residue of color in there if you're using a red. And it'll take out any residue of color in there if you're using a red. And it'll take out any residue of color in there if you're using a red. And it'll take out any residue of color in there if you're using a and it gets caught in the corners and you can't get it out. Way better than a bottle brush. I've used the electric mixers. I feel like they get a lot of air in them. And they break really fast. That was my other thing. But hey, if you found one that works really well and stays together, I just felt like mine died after 3 or 4 months with as much color as I do. And I just kept going through them. And I'm really messy.
So I was gonna say,
I'm really messy and I like to stack my bowls up. So I used to have 3 or 4 of them and shit would get stuck in the top of them and dry. And it was just a MF to clean out. And everyone hated me and or my assistant wanted to kill me trying to clean them out. Okay, I am confused when to use 5 volume alone, when to use 5 volume with booster. Okay. So if you need a liquid progressive acidic demi, you would want to use, and I say progressive because of the fact it will continue to deposit the longer you leave it on. Manufacturer's directions with 5 volume is up to 20 minutes. If you leave it on longer, it will go 2, 3, 4, 5 shades darker.
and depending on the porosity and texture
Yeah.
of that hair, you could get that before 20
Yeah.
minutes. You really have to watch it.
So you would pick one of the shades, there again, that has 3 dots on it. There's 36 of these shades that can be intermixed by themselves with 5 volume alone. They're going to make an acidic progressive demi color. These are great for toning quickly at the bowl. If you need someone that needs a lot of sealing done, you can do it. I would say do it on damp hair at the bowl. I find that in general, under 10 minutes, and usually it's more the 3 to 5 minutes, it's done. Shampoo it, rinse it off. I've never needed longer, with the exception of the clear, which has red algae extract in it, which is the most repairing and healing. The clear you can leave on forever.
I feel like I just want to touch on the question really. Oh, sorry.
Okay, really quick. And then when would you use booster? You would use booster if you're intermixing 2 shades together, 2 dot and a 3 dot. By adding in a small amount of booster, it allows the pigments to couple, but beyond that, it makes it slightly alkaline. And so the way that I would describe it is 3 dots by itself with 5 volume and no booster is going to be kind of the equivalent to Lumishine, Shades EQ, those type products. With the exception, the longer you leave it on, the darker it will get. Where those other 2 products in particular stop at 20 minutes and do not progressively get darker and continue to deposit. Adding booster in allows you to intermix any one of the shades together to custom create a color. And it makes it more like Shades EQ Cream, Color Touch, Dia Richesse, Burmesi's Eclectic, any one of your more tube, slightly alkaline demi creams. It's going to cover gray. Now, when would you use 13 volume? I would use 13 volume if I needed to budge that natural melanin. Let's say I wanted to do a 6R and really, really get that brightness. I would use 13 volume. If I'm trying to get extra gray coverage on somebody that was 60% gray, I would use the 13 volume. I would also potentially use 13 volume with 12-1 if I'm trying to slightly break the base and tone at the same time. I've also used it for lifting a level if I wanted to not stir up a bunch of melanin to keep the color on the cooler side. I will say that it's not like a true full level of lift like you would get, with your permanent color. But those are instances when I would use the Demi Plus with 13 volume. Okay.
Sorry, the gloss, as far as looking at the gloss, which is because and this is also if you're starting out, this really was amazing for me because I pop this out and I stick it in my station, in my cabinet where I keep my color, because it gives me my cheat sheets for my formulas, how to mix, what to mix, how to mix it. It also has another thing I'll talk about in a few minutes. But on here, on the gloss service, which is the hollow or the empty circle, the question when I was looking at that, I was thinking that's the same thing that scared me when I first started using it, because you can get such intensity of deposit with that gloss. Even when you're using clear, it's really good deposit, which is a fantastic thing. But if you're used to other glosses that don't give you that level of deposit, it can be a little bit scary. And that's where using the booster with the 5 volume can help you ease into it. So you can get the feel for Beauty Fusion, how it's going to deposit, how the potential of its deposit, and then move from there. So it's just an extra tool in your tool chest to use for the gloss. If it gets a little, because it was, I won't lie, it was scary for me at first. The first time I used it, I was so used to using something and walking away, like checking it in 5 minutes. I didn't walk away and go have lunch or anything, but when I came back, I was like, oh, all I did was go set my bowls in the back. I was gone maybe 2-3 minutes, and I was toning a blonde and was like, oh yeah, there were a lot of shits in that moment. So, so that when Dustin shared with me using some booster in there, that changed that for me, and it helped me gauge how much pigment was in there to be able to use the gloss in a different way.
And I will say that I haven't really noticed it budge a base when it's been on, the up to 20 minutes that it's recommended. I feel like in general, most semi-permanent colors leave some kind of line of demarcation. I will tell you that because of the heavy dye load with Beauty Fusion, if you're switching from another color line like Color Touch, you may want to consider going a shade lighter. And I was going to say, I believe one of these is downloadable off the website. If not, call the office. I would really highly recommend that you guys get this because it breaks it down. Like there's a page in here, and these are, the colors that have 3 dots on it that are completely intermixable. And these are kind of good charts to rip out and have in your dispensary. You really don't need the other charts for Demi Plus or permanent because every color can be used that way. But sometimes having this mounted to the inside of your cabinet, along with like the booster breakdown chart, are just really good, quick, easy. So you don't have to think about, oh, does it have 3 dots? Or pull out each bottle and look. Also in the back of your swatch book, there's another page like this in the very back, and we don't, oh, it's right here. And on it, if you are looking for formulas for liquid acidic colors, because in the N series, the liquid acidic colors are, actually, I think it's this one, isn't it?
That's this.
Oh, I guess we don't have it in this one. So on the back page, there's a page and it gives some formulas. So if you're looking for some kind of in-between liquid acidic formulas for glossing at the bowl, here we go. They're right here. And because in 3 dots, there's 12N, 6N, and 3N, and those are the colors that you get. So it gives you formulas in here to make a 9N, a 6G, a 7G, an 8G, a 9G, to kind of fill in where there's holes in the line for a liquid acidic gloss with no booster. I will say, like everything else, they are still progressive. Keep your eye on them. Even though there's lots of clear in these formulas, still watch them, do them at the bowl. Do not walk away. And hey, once you get some timing that you're used to, and you know that client's hair, I'll leave that timing and what you do behind the chair up to you. I am new to Beauty Fusion. Is it the same as you up to? I hate to interrupt your flow of speaking right now. Okay, so the big difference is Beauty Fusion mixed with 5-volume is completely acidic. You'll get no bumping of the base, zero, no lift at all. With Beauty Fusion and the Demi formula, depending on the shade, like I said, I always use booster one, so the chance of bumping the base is slim to none. And in the manual, it still tells you for a Demi Plus on level 7 and above to use booster 2. I don't want to bump the base with my Demi for the most part, so I always use booster 1. I don't get a base shift. With you up to, I definitely think that you get a base shift. And I also feel like the pigment dye load in you up to is very sheer, just in general. I feel like you definitely get a more opaque Demi, regardless, even if you're using this with 5-volume straight, or you're using this with the Demi Plus formulation. I definitely feel like it's more opaque. So if you use an 8.0, I feel like you get an 8.0, and you up to, you're going to get very light gray blending and a very sheer color. And if you leave it on longer, you may get a base shift. The times that I personally use you up to, I really, really love the reds, and I really love the 0.7s. And I intentionally use you up to in those because of the base shift and the luminosity of it. So if I have a client, and let's say right now in fall, we're transitioning them and they may have some old highlights and they're level 5, I will intentionally use you up to with 5.7, 6.7, 7.43, or some kind of combination to turn them into like an auburn, because I feel like it will slightly shift that base and you'll still see those old highlights through. Where I feel like if I were to do the same formula in Beauty Fusion, I would probably get less of the highlights through. What is you up to? You up to is the other liquid Demi from Artego. It's the older one. So that's kind of like when I would use you up to. I personally don't like it for toning. I feel like it's really sheer. And by the time I've left it on long enough to get the tone, I feel like I definitely notice a base shift with it. And that's why I would use, Beauty Fusion for toning. I'm trying to think of what else. I will also sometimes use the darker shades in you up to do a root smudge, like if I'm smudging with a 4 or a 3. And that's just because sometimes I feel like those really dark shades and Beauty Fusion and the Demi Plus are a little too opaque for a root smudge. Although in general, for level 7, 8, which is what I do a lot of my root smudges with, I do use the Demi Plus in Beauty Fusion, and I leave it on, 5 minutes. For a beginner, would you recommend I buy Beauty Fusion? I guess that's kind of a hard question. I would say, that would really depend on how comfortable you feel. I would definitely probably recommend that you have the office get you the manuals and read them over to really know what you're getting into. And I don't know that in the very beginning as a beginner, I would use it as my sole line. I would probably start out with its color because it's a little more forgiving and, you know, a little more straightforward.
So my question would be, what's your clientele? Like, do you have a pretty wide range of clientele? Do you do great coverage? What do you use it on? As if you're somebody like me who does great coverage, I would say jump in, because it's been, I mean, my clients commented immediately that they didn't see as much fadage, and they had that it was covered in a beautiful tone. There's shades, my favorite shades to mix in. Well, my favorite shade to mix in are the 0.7s, the chocolates. It gives such a beautiful, rich, just gorgeous brown for the clients I use, or that in.
And
Boy, that came out like a word salad.
and I would say that definitely if you're doing more reds, I would definitely say its color is the way to go. The red palette is very expansive. They're more intense. I personally think that like the 0.44s, the coppers run about at least a level lighter, and they're not as intense, in my opinion, as they should be, where like the 0.44s and its color are copper, outer space orange, which is great if that's what you're looking for. Do you always go to 30 volume on resistant gray hair? I personally don't. I up the booster, but
So in other color lines, since I inherited a lot of clients, because I seem in my past salons and places, because I could seem to get them covered when other people couldn't. But again, it's knowing your color line and how the chemicals of how hair color works and how to tweak it. I would like split the developers. I would do different things. I usually didn't do a full 30 volume developer, because the 30 volume, because you got alkalinity in there too. So I'm going to bump that. And if it fades, I'm more concerned about them fading their underlying pigment as it fades, more so than the coverage at that point. But so I would do different things with that. With Beauty Fusion, I've not used 30 volume at all with to get full coverage on clients that I used to process for 45 minutes, that extra 15 minutes of time to get coverage. I don't have to do that at all. And I'm not going above 20 volume. In fact, there's a couple of clients that with previous color lines that I've used that were very difficult to cover, that I've actually bumped down to 13 to the 13 volume, and they're getting full coverage on their hair.
I was going to say across the board with Artego, this is what I've noticed is out of all of my clients, I have 2 clients that I use 30 volume on for a couple of reasons. One, I'm lifting over 2 levels. One has thick, well, actually they both have thick ethnic hair. One is Hispanic, one is Asian. So I use 30 volume for a couple of reasons. I think even if I was staying closer to their natural, I would probably still use 30 volume and break the rules and maybe use a little bit of heat, because their cuticle is so tenacious. I have found that 20 volume works 99% of the time if your formulation is correct, with the correct amount of neutral, and with its color, if you're making sure that you're using the correct amount of NN in your formula. I have not had a problem. Now, I have had some clients with very fine hair that was very resistant, and I have personally found with the whole Artego portfolio, if you're using Beauty Fusion, bumping them down to 13 volume, and or in its color using 10 volume. And I've also been asked, and maybe you would be a good one to ask because you do it all the time, when you bump somebody down to the 13 volume with Beauty Fusion, are you using the Demi Plus formula, or are you still using the permanent formula?
I'm using the Demi Plus formula. actually, because, and that, I mean, honestly, just even saying those words out of my mouth is kind of a surprise because I mean, I fought him tooth and nail with this. He'll say, try this, try that. And I'm like, oh no, I'm not going to do that. That's not going to work. And it's worked. Jumping back to your like using 30 volume, see what I would do in that instead of the 30 volume is I might add with Beauty Fusion a little more, a 1 mil more a booster, try that way. So that's the really cool thing about this line is you can have your tools are separated so you could use so many more ways to get to your end result. It's fascinating to me and super cool that like what you would do and what I would do would be different and what you guys would do we could learn from, you know, what works for you because each client's different. And there's a how long do you process gray? 30 minutes, I do the 30 minutes and there are a couple of clients that I do leave on for 40 to 45. She has super coarse hair. She has that gray where it comes out and it almost twists on itself and it's right here, right in this section. The rest of it is fine. I do leave hers on a little bit longer. I will start the application here where it's the most resistant and has that kind of that interesting wiry gray. And then I will do the rest of it and set a timer for 30 minutes, but in reality, it's been on here for a little bit longer. Sometimes I will come back and I'll swipe a little bit with her just to make sure. And I will leave her on longer. So I do 30 minutes. On occasion, I will do 40 minutes for timing.
That's your Instagram, right? Melanie Sewell hair.
Yeah. Okay, so I have a love-hate relationship with social media, so I'll start posting more hair pictures, but I don't have a whole lot on there. There's some on there.
And lately I've been doing a lot of stories and not posting, and then I'll catch up and I have a ton of posts on there, but usually like formulas and daily stuff, I'll post in my stories. And then once every couple of months, I'll dump a bunch in my posts. So you kind of have to watch my daily stories, but there's hundreds in my feed. You use 601 and 10 volume in its color for gray blending. What would you use in Beauty Fusion? I guess that would depend on how much coverage. I will tell you, in my personal experience, I do not get good coverage out of all of the It's Color portfolio with the O1s. So I'm assuming that it's very gray blended. I would suggest probably 7N and 7.1 with Demi Plus and 5 volume. I would go that level lighter. And I would say 25 minutes. I might swatch it out first and just make sure that's enough. In my opinion, I think that 7N and 7.1 with 5 volume and booster #1 is probably going to get you better gray coverage depending on the client than 601 and 10 volume for Mids Color. I can't say that for certain without seeing the client, but that would be my hunch. The O1s are probably the only thing in Its Color that I just tend to make myself with the N series and the 0.1 because I feel like I get better gray coverage doing that. Because I have had a couple of people that it didn't cover enough and I had them come back and I had to redo it and I don't have time for that. So
interestingly too, just to jump back into Beauty Fusion, I used to use a lot of like mix the ash and neutral in my other clients to keep it that cool tone. I haven't really had to do that in Beauty Fusion. It actually stays pretty cool. Do you find that too?
yes.
I have eliminated ash from several of my gray coverage formulas because, and again, another thing that I was like, wow moment. But it actually has stayed on that true neutral tone.
And I will say that part of that is with Beauty Fusion, and this is something to kind of understand, is the color wheel. And not everything in the Artego portfolio sits on the color wheel the same way. So where the golds land here, they're not going to be the same place on Its Color. I feel like the golds in Beauty Fusion are a softer, prettier gold, where in Its Color, I feel like they're very, very bright yellow orange in intensity. And in Beauty Fusion, I feel like they're softer and more of a balanced yellow golden. The neutral in Beauty Fusion sits with a brown base, but still on the cooler side with a green undertone. And I think that's why and don't be freaked out on the green undertone. You're not going to see green, but it does have that in there. So the finished result is going to neutralize out a lot of warmth, where in its color, the neutral sits on the warmer side of the wheel. So you get more of like that warmer Mediterranean Italian finish that you would get with more of like Vermisi or any of the other Italian colors in the neutral series. I might also add that 12O is a toner, is not truly a neutral. It's got a slightly gray base, and in the manual, it breaks that down. And so I think it's a really lovely toner with 5 volume on its own to create a really soft, kind of creamy blonde on pale yellow without being overtoned.
Yeah.
Let's see.
But I mean, like with any toner, you want to really look at the color wheel and know what you're putting it over. And this color wheel is really a good one to work with because this piece actually came from my cabinet. I take this out. I take the natural so I can swatch people, and I keep this just in my cabinet because if I have a new client and I'm changing a client's color, I'm looking at this to find out where that lives on the color wheel, so I can that helps make my choice.
Okay, guys, we have to wrap it up. I just put my number in the chat box again. If we didn't get to your questions, text me. If you have questions for Melanie, I can get them to her or give you her number. But please let us know. It's been a really great time, and we might do like a second follow-up with Melanie and kind of go over some more Beauty Fusion, some tips and tricks. And I hope today was helpful for everyone. Like I said, text me with your questions. Robert, I can help you more with like the Shades EQ, color gels transition, color fusion. I've been there. I get it. So, okay, everyone, thank you so much. And we can do a live color demo. I just want everyone to know that it's going to be like a 2-hour Zoom. So if you guys are fine with a 2-hour Zoom, we can do it. I just want everyone to know that if we do a live color demo, it is going to be a 2-hour Zoom. So we can set one up. Okay, perfect. Well, I will set one up for the office at maybe after the first of the year, but we can see what we can do. Perfect. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good day.